Good morning folks, welcome back to the farm. Today we're back on the hedging, but I'm going to give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at what we're up to. So stick around and let's get planting. So if you've seen the recent video where we did the main bulk of the hedging, you'll know that we've done about 350 meters so far. So that's all down the top field, all around the paddock, down the bottom as well, down in the meadow. But I've got a couple of stretches that I need to get on with, and that's what I'm going to be doing today. So first things first, before we start, we need to prepare the ground. This is not prepared. In the other fields, we actually sprayed our kind of corridors that we created with double fences. I really didn't want to do that, but actually it's a recommended method, and it's away from stock and it's a one-time only thing. If it's going to give the hedge the best start, I'm happy to do that. So we just sprayed off literally the strip where we were going in with the hedging a few weeks, about a month beforehand. The grass had then died off and I just trimmed it so it was kind of scalped. We then went in with the hedging and then we mulched, but we'll come back to that in a minute. But here is not as ideal. This is pretty poor quality grass because it's just something that was overseeded. It is just grass, therefore we're going to need to mulch this a bit just to make sure that grass doesn't keep coming up. And I've got loads of wood chip at the end there, so we'll just do a light covering, we'll let the hedge come up, and then we'll just keep an eye on it. I don't really want to kill off grass down here if I can avoid it. Now of course the other option is to put down a weed fabric. You can put a 1 meter strip all the way along. Unfortunately, once you've planted through that, it's very hard to remove in, you know, a few years later. And it always just looks messy, it's plastic in the ground, it frays, you end up with bits everywhere, and I just didn't want the legacy of a big plastic strip being at the bottom of our hedge forever. So therefore we've used sheep's wool. Elsewhere we're going to use bark here, but for now we're just going to go straight into this grass. Now we're planting at 6 a metre or thereabouts, so that is approximately a boot's width between plants. First thing I did was to set out our string line. The string line in our instance is 1.2 meters from our fence to come out to here. That will allow the hedge to grow up, and it's not going to get too much stock damage, and also it's not going to be too close to the fence. It looks like there's a big gap here, but that will soon close up. You know, 4 or 5 years from now this should fill this space. So we've got our string line going up, and I've done about a third of it, but I'm going to show you the different plants we're doing. Let me introduce you to what we're actually planting. We've got 6 different species as well as some trees going in. So from the left we've got the blackthorn. If I swap these over, actually, this is the predominant species. So this is hawthorn, and we have got 70% hawthorn, so a few thousand of these, or 2,000 of these. And then blackthorn makes up probably about 1 every metre, 1 every 2 metres. Then we've got some crabapple. These are all about once every 3 metres. Dog rose. This is a field maple. They're the hardest ones to, or easiest ones to lose. And then as well as that, we've got our hazel, which are in little plug plants. I've just planted the last one. I've got a few more to open up. So that is our mix. And in addition, we're planting larger 2 metre trees of other species every 20 metres or thereabouts. So that's the theory. Let me show you the practical side of it. So if you're planting any thorn species and the roses and things like that, you're definitely going to want leather gloves. They're pretty pokey. So onto the tools. Apart from the string line, there's not really much to it, but I would recommend a tree planting spade. They're a little bit narrower. I only got this one last week, but it's been well worth getting. The one that is currently being used as a tripod is a regular sort of square spade, and they're a bit heavier, they're wider than needed, and also they're not as deep. So this just goes in way easier. And if you've got any stones in the ground, when you get to them, you can kind of rock and go past. You kind of have to use it to know what I'm on about, but that's what we're doing. We'll go in almost full depth for a hawthorn. You can see this is a bare root hawthorn. It's been a little bit trimmed, I think, at the bottom. That's what they do with these ones. And then there's a yellowy sort of lighter patch there. That is the nursery level of soil, where just as it came out of the old soil. So we want to plant to that same point. We want to make sure all the roots are in, but we also don't want to kind of bury any of the actual above ground section. So we'll just put it deeper than needed, then pull up to that level, tread in either side, and then you just want to kind of heel it in The other thing you can do is just put the spade in and just kind of lever the soil back, because we want to make sure there's no gap around the roots there. And then we'll come across, get our next one in. Bit of a rock. Now you see this one here, this is a blackthorn, and it's a much bigger root there, so we're going to have to do a little bit of work to get that in. So we'll make it deeper but a little bit wider, and then you can kind of bunch them a little bit to swipe them in. You just want to make sure they're all in, and then lift them up to the right height and get them in. Right, little update, I've gone on and got the stakes in, so these are just kind of normal 3-foot bamboo canes all the way along here, and you can probably make out, if I've got it right, this is our staggered joint, so everything is kind of a boot apart but just half a boot staggered. Here's a load of the mulch. It's started to compost down anyway, so once we've got the guards on we can start putting this in. There's another 8-10 tons or so of this piled up in the yard, and that will just help keep this grass down. I've scalped it as low as I could, and the rabbit run has been tracking up and down this area as well, so I don't think it's going to outcompete it, certainly not in the next few months. So here are the spirals that we're using. Of course there's nothing unusual about these. They are what you see on the majority of small saplings in and around the country. However, we've gone for a bio spiral, so these are actually biodegradable. I have no idea what they're made of, and maybe before the end of this video I'll find out and let you know. They're made in the UK, but anyway, they are more expensive, but they came as part of the package if you chose that option. And all we want to do with these, just start at the bottom, feed it round. If they're really branchy like this blackthorn is, I'm not kind of crushing it into the spiral. I'm just letting it stay quite loose at the top. And then we're just pushing it down into the ground as well to make sure it's sealed off. The other option for us, or perhaps you if you're in a similar situation, is if you've got a fence here, especially if you're double fencing, the other option would be to run some rabbit mesh, chicken mesh along the inside of it on both sides. So rather than using individual tree guards, you could just rabbit proof or vermin proof that area. It's a little bit easier to do when you've double fenced something. Here it wouldn't really work, but we've gone on and just done the bio spirals, but the spirals are actually holding it to the cane as well, so they're support as well as protection. Now we ran out of wool, but the 2 bulk bags of wool from our sheep, we've got 30, we had 30 sheep to shear last year or earlier this year. That produced enough wool to mulch around about 250 meters of hedging, a good amount around each one. So it went quite far, and you can get, you know, it's pennies wool. Unfortunately, wool is just an inexpensive thing, and there's just no value to it. And until that changes, there's a surplus, and I'm sure you wouldn't struggle to find some raw fleeces to use, whether it's in a garden or a hedge or whatever like that. So we're going to get on and do these spirals. Other things that you can do, you could, if they were slightly bigger hedge plants, you could put compost or feed or hedge start or any of the fertilizer type stuff, or to get the roots going. But you imagine this sort of quantity, that would slow things down a lot, and we opted not to. We think our soil is pretty decent here, certainly in most of the areas we've gone, and a lot of the benefit of the mulch on top, that's going to start composting down. A lot of that will kind of add to the nutrients in the soil. And if you're wondering why the dog looks sad, she's on heat, so she's tied up at the moment, so the neighbour's Labrador doesn't have his way with her. And she had a nice big goat bone, but she's trying to bury it. It'll be over soon, my love, you hormonal pup. Right, you didn't think I was going to leave it there. Tis a fine day to plant some more trees. So we've done all the hedging. I've got enough hedging left to do about 40 metres, maybe 30 or 40 metres. That's a little bit down by the lake field, and then the remaining plant's going to be used to just gap up and kind of fill in poor areas in the existing hedgerows, which there's quite a lot of, but naturally those will fill out now we've started to double fence and fence the hedging away from stock. But my job now is to fill in a few gaps in the hedge, well, not even gaps, but just to install some trees in the hedge line. So here they are about 2 meters, some of them are a little bit taller, and we're going to put them into the existing hedgerows. This is far more difficult than where I've put them down the top. I've put them just in amongst, so every 20 meters whilst planting the hedge plants, I've just substituted one for a big one. Now I've got to get in that hedge over there and see if I can just notch in a couple of these bigger ones in this field, and then 3 in the top one, so they're again every 20 meters ish. So I'm thinking, well, that hedging has been left long there, so we'll come up a little bit. I'm thinking of maybe we've got a beech. They're the tallest of the lot. So if these are bare root, but obviously more roots on them than I've just had them in a bucket of compost. So there's a beech. Stay. I've got an oak that I put in last year up the top, so that's counting as one of ours. So I'll come up a little bit. I've got hornbeam and cherry. I'm going to save, I'll put one cherry over there. Oh, this is testing me now. Cherry are going to be those ones. That one's still got a label on, am I right? I'm not. That's older. Rowan. Oh, we haven't planted any of them yet. Let's get a rowan in there. That's one there as well. See, I think that's too small. They're meant to be 2 meters. I'm not sure I'd call that one a tree. But it is what it is. That field maple, we'll stake him up, he should be okay. Right, it's actually not as bad as I thought. I thought we were going to have to notch into these hedges, but I think there's enough space. At the moment, the hedge, this is from last year's cutting, it's been cut to there. So we've got this space here, and you can see, if you to look in there, this had no fencing either side until last year, because next door did their fencing a few months ahead of us. So theirs is kind of sheep proof that side. We've got probably 2.5 meters or more between, and then we've got our new fencing in here, and what that means is this can now carry on and do what it needs to do, fill out, and then I might even see if they want to leave this to go up, because this is their hedge, and we can get this laid, because they would naturally then fill out even more. You can see that one in there where it's just kind of going across and then shot up, and there, you know, decades ago that would have been done. So I reckon it probably deserves to be left and laid, and I think it's probably workable. This space, not ideal, obviously it'd be nice. This one down here I'm going to leave, which is R1. I got butchered this year to get all the fencing sorted, but from now on we can leave it, and then that's got loads of access to lay that hedge from the other side. I'm going to go straight in there with this beech. Life's a beech. Look at that, beautiful against the blue sky. I definitely want to get some beech up there, because as we start using more red brick around the buildings and start to restore some of the stuff, I just love the look of the beech. Alright, got a bit of plastic to get rid of there. Not leave that legacy behind. Get this backfill, give them a jiggle, make sure there's no air pockets down around its roots. So it's going to fill up with water and freeze. He's pretty sheltered here anyway. We're going to get there's some straps in the truck. I think we should be able to get a spiral around the bottom there just to keep the bunnies off that, just in case. I don't think they're going to bother it. For those of you who don't know the lay of the land here, this is a hill field, and the little bit that we're in now is a couple of paddocks that we split off to make use of, basically for keeping either goats or rams or anything separate. But this steep section we're on now is south facing and fine for grazing, but we do like the idea one day of getting some vines up here, because it's a small space and we can still graze once the vines are taken, or fruit trees. But the idea of a little vineyard would be quite cool, I think. We've got a winemaker, another bigger vineyard near here, who hopefully will give us some advice, but they also will make wine from your grapes, so we wouldn't have to set up a full-on winery here. But oh crikey, no, that's too much, I think. Oh. But there's enough space here to have probably 3 varieties, and they would be, I don't know what we've got, 60 meters in each row. I don't know what the spacings are. We've seen a few around here. It's quite a lot of soft fruit and wine growing around here, so it'll be interesting to see what varieties people are growing. But anyway, that's our long-term aspiration for there. Right, some little ones, straps. So as well as these, which just meet the criteria in that they're kind of 2 meters tall, for the grants, we've kind of gone beyond that, and in, was it like early spring last year, basically the end of the bare root root ball season, I went to an auction and I picked up 6 or 7 really big trees. So they were kind of 16 foot plus. The smallest of those was this one here, which is an oak tree. And obviously if you're impatient at all, you kind of want to get something that's fairly established as an oak tree, otherwise it's going to take decades and decades. So I don't know how old this would be, but here he is. I kind of put him in last minute, and he hasn't even got a stake, but he's pretty sheltered up here. I will need to get a stake in just so I can take the photo and make sure that they're happy, but he's obviously done fine. He's been in 9-10 months, and he was all nice and green all summer. And I think what we'll do is, one of the other things we're required to do is we need to go along and tie a fluorescent or brightly coloured ribbon or tape on the trees. I don't think it matters down here because they're less than the height of the hedge, but if next door were to cut this hedge and not know, I don't think they reached quite as far as this last year, but if they did, I wouldn't want them to top this. So I'll mention it to them anyway, but I'll also tie a ribbon on, so hopefully whatever contractor they're using will actually spot it, because that would be a bit of a shame. But even in here, you know, I need to get out that bit of fencing. Should really be getting in there and putting some extra bonus hawthorn plants in. So I'll see what I've got left. What I might have to do is just leave it for this season, or for this side of the new year I should say, and then come back in February, March time and just get another bag of 100 hawthorn plants, and I'll just kind of get in there and fill these holes. If we don't do it now, we won't do it for 5 years, then we'll be worrying why we've still got holes. Good. So last little job up here is to just finish off. We've brought a little bit more wool up where I've finished off planting the gaps that we left in this run. I can get a bit of wool down just so it all looks the same, and hopefully they'll all stay well mulched. It's actually got quite a lot more white now the rain's washed it all clean, but I'm sure it won't be long before grass gets around it and you won't really see the wool anymore. Here we are. that is hedging 101 from amateur me. We've done 400 meters. There's about 50 meters left, so I've got enough plants to fill in a few holes. Obviously we've got ancient, old, tired hedgerows around the place that need a bit of love, so I'll get on and do that. And then there's also a couple of rocky patches which we couldn't get a spade into very easily, which we missed out up on the top field, so I'm going to go back up there probably with a pickaxe and start loosening things up. But it was a good solid week of work to get that done. We had volunteers for the initial stages, and then we've done this ourselves, and it's one of those things, it's a bit of a chore, not very exciting, but 4 or 5 years time it's going to be amazing to look out and have nice green boundaries around all these fields. Here we go. If you want any more info on where I got all the trees from, I'll put that down in the description. The hedging was from a place called Trees Please. You probably won't find them on the internet because their website just never exists, or it just has a holding page. We met them at a show. They're really geared up for this sort of thing. I think they're probably a huge nursery that supplies other sellers, but if you go to them, they just have a per meter price and they do all the mix for you. And they also supplied the buyers canes and spirals. I think it was about £8 to £10 a meter, depending on different options. And then the trees, we ordered hedging plants, and they were from Hedges Direct, which is quite a user-friendly big website. And if you go for their largest hedge plants, they're essentially a standard, you know, they're a 2 meter tall tree. We'll just need to do a little bit of clipping and pruning around the base of them to develop them into a tree, like all these lovely trees behind me, rather than they're unkept at the moment. I don't know if they were being kept as trees. You'd probably see a bit more trimming over the few years that they've had. So for instance, this hornbeam here, all of these lower branches, probably not this year, or not even next year. Well, definitely this one coming out the side, but we want to kind of send all the growth to the top, so might be worth thinning those bits there. Anyway, there we go. Thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next time.